Welcome to Mindfully Sovereign, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your feminine self-authority and unleash the abundance within. My name is Sapha, I am your host, and I'm here to help guide you past your limiting beliefs and into the heart of your unwavering and undeniable power. This podcast is all about reclaiming your feminine self-authority, learning the art of self-seduction, and awakening your inner goddess so that you can become an aligned match to your most abundant life yet. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and get ready to become mindfully sovereign. Happy Monday and hello. Welcome back to Mindfully Sovereign, beautiful soul. I want to have a conversation with you today that I feel might ruffle a couple of feathers, but I also know is important for us to be having because it, when we bury our heads in the sand, things get worse. So it's better for us to be in conversation about these things, to explore potential for growth and healing, and for us to learn how things best benefit us and how we can approach them from a place of personal sovereignty so that our lives feel more rich, more fulfilling, more expansive, more delightful because of that. And so, why I'm prefacing this for you is because I'm going to talk a little bit about a topic that will feel very niche to some of you, but that really encompasses all of us in many different ways. And so, I'm going to talk a little bit about the coaching world as it stands. And again, I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers. I want to make sure that I add enough amount of nuance in this for us to really consider, and I know that it's also a topic that feels very front of mind or that feels very present in my body and my heart and my soul of late because since the moment I decided that I was going to work with women one on one to help them fall in love with themselves and to help them heal the relationship to self, I moved in the general direction of this coaching stratosphere, by virtue of not really knowing what this business should look like in terms of it being so different, vastly different from anything that I had been exposed to. So, for a little bit of background, I taught and still do teach yoga. I've been teaching it for over 20 years, which is crazy and I love so much. And if you think about a yoga studio, right, there's a particular way in which the business is run. And for a while, I considered, what would it be like to have my own space? But it was never something that I fully wanted to commit to, especially because what I really felt called to was this: the heart to heart, the one on one, the attention, the connection, the expansive nature of the work that I do now. Before I did this, though, and you might have heard me say this before, so if you have, just bear with me. A little bit of a repeat here, just for a moment. So, what happened was when I was teaching yoga, people started coming up to me, women, I say people, but it was mostly women, started coming up to me to ask me what I was eating in a day. And if you remember the conversation that we had at the beginning of the season, a lot of it was driven by this idea that women have to fit a particular mold, a particular size. And that's where a lot of those questions were coming from. Because at the time, I was still in a smaller body, right? From years of not just my eating disorder, but from like the sickness that I'd had. And people assumed that by doing yoga, I kept this lithe form that I was inhabiting, not knowing, of course, all of the things that were preceding all of that. And so I didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel good to my soul to just give advice on nutrition based off the fact that I was teaching yoga. It made no sense to me. I was like, I teach yoga. I know this. This is what I'm well versed in, but I didn't know anything about nutrition, nor had I studied that in school, nothing. So instead of taking clients on, quote unquote, as nutrition clients from a point of understanding that I did not possess, I decided to study. This is kind of like the thing that I do in my life. I study a lot. I'm just a perpetual student. And so I decided to study specifically nutrition, and I wanted specifically to study nutrition that felt more holistic. And I loved it. I was very passionate about it, had a great old time. And when I was in school, not a single conversation that I could have possibly had around how to run a nutrition business could have prepared me for what I was going to face later. So I start studying nutrition and then I start my practice. I start taking clients, and you've heard me say this before, but the second the client sat across from me, the conversation just naturally went deeper. All of a sudden, their hearts, their souls started pouring out. I could hear things that maybe they weren't so cognizant of, that was shining lights into parts of themselves, parts of their subconscious, parts of who they were showing up as in this world that were not favoring them, not serving them. And I noticed that there was a big amount of constriction in my being to allow myself to hold space for them the way that I wanted to, because despite years of study, despite just a bunch of things, again, did not feel like I could just call myself a life coach and do this. It just wasn't a thing that I felt comfortable doing. And in this, after I'd actually shadowed a life coach for about, what was it, 2 years prior. So I knew, I was familiar with the practice, and I knew that I wanted to work with people. I knew that my intuitive heart was very present. I knew that there were things that I could help guide them through. I knew that there was so much there for me to explore, but I was very scared. And I was scared because I didn't want to be judged by people. I didn't want to be put in a category that I didn't think suited me. And I wanted to be very careful to make sure that I wasn't going to accidentally cause more harm than good. And so I took some time to process that. I took some time to think about that. And I recognized that really all of my clients were getting this mentorship from me. And I worked, even in some cases, I had clients whose therapists and I worked together so that we could help my clients, and that was wonderful. And they always encouraged me to go forth and do my mentorship, right? Still calling it life coaching. I don't like calling it life coaching, but I call it mentorship. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna be brave. I'm just going to, at this point in time in my life, I was making a lot of brave choices. And I was free of just so much toxicity in my life. And I was just ready to really take the next step and be brave. But what was I supposed to do next? Was my question. It's like, I know for my nutrition business, where and how I can advertise, who I can collaborate with, the things that I can talk about on social media. I was very clear on what that looked like from a marketing perspective, from a business based perspective, because I was even thinking about where I was going to have my offices and what they were going to look like. It just was um, very different kind of resonance. And at the time, that I decided I was going to start making the transition into this intuitive healing space that I still embody so freely now. At that time, we also had the pandemic and everything moved online. Everything. My yoga classes were virtual, any consultations I was doing were virtual, and I was like, "Wow, okay, so what does this look like? You were how can I possibly start a quote unquote business in this climate, and what does that mean? Like, what is that going to ask of me to provide? Because it's not going to be a brick and mortar type situation. Marketing is going to have to be very different. I want to make sure that I sit down and take a look at, and this is where some of you are going to start understanding what I'm saying a little bit more deeply, is client avatars. And I want to look at the business model that I wanted to use. I wanted to look at the foundations for the business, meaning my core values of my business. I wanted to like take a look at the mission statement. I wanted to do all of those things and put them together so that I can form my LLC. And that's exactly what I did. And that went really well. And then in market research, I started noticing that the arena that I was moving into was very different from anything that I had quote unquote studied for, right? And I didn't know what to do. But I'd heard through a friend of mine that they were working with a business coach and that they had done wonders for them, and all of a sudden their businesses were thriving, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. That's probably what I need, right? Business coaching, meaning like someone who's going to help me understand my business and run it in a way that allows me to make a living, to serve the people I want to serve, to show up in a very real tangible way, but with the understanding that this space is unique and different from, any kind of like brick and mortar type system that I had been exposed to prior, or even any kind of corporate based thing that I had lived in for as long as I had. And so I was like, this is fantastic. So I started shopping around, and I did find someone that I started working with, and it was one of those massive steps of like leaps of faith, because the amount that they were asking to work with me one on one, which is how I prefer to do things, by the way. Like, again, this is one of those things where, like, not only do I prefer to work with people one on one, I also prefer to work with people one on one, the reverse. Groups have never necessarily been my thing. Even in school, I needed a tutor. I prefer personal attention. That's just how I learn better. It's better for me altogether. So I was like, this is great. So the investment that they wanted for the one-on-one was considerable. It was large. And so I took a step of bravery, and I invested in this because I firmly believed that it was going to allow me to 10 times my reach so that I could serve as many women as possible. And it was going to allow me to establish my business and live off of this wonderful devotion and wonderful passion that I have in my heart for the work that I do with women. And it was great. It was a good experience. But one of the things that I noticed right off the bat was that anytime the conversation of how came around, in terms of, for example, there was a time that I said to them, "Hey, imagine for a moment, let's pretend, let's do some role play as an actor." Of course, I would say that. Let's role play that I don't have any followers at all on my social media right now. How would I go about getting the proper eyes on my material so that I can welcome aligned clients into my space? And this was always a shutdown. This was always, in fact, at the time, I remember so very clearly that they even told me, "I'm not even going to do that. I'm not going to give it any kind of attention, because why would you do that energetically? It makes no sense." And at the time, I said, "Oh, okay. I'll back off. Let's not go there." And then it was the next big how, and the next big how, and the next big how. And so I ended up learning a particular system with this coach that I started implementing, that is now the cookie cutter way in which most coaches, mentors, guides, and etc. have been showing up in this world. And this is why I want to talk about it. I'm not in a way of talking shit on the industry or the people in it. I do want us to start having important conversations about some tactics, tools, techniques, conversations, patterns that are showing up in that world, in this world, that are not serving anyone and that are in fact causing a lot of harm. And so, what the system is, and you might be familiar with it, even if you're not in the coaching space, even if you're not in the way of doing this, you would have come across this because this becomes so prevalent that it's pretty much across the board how things work. The system is, you create a product suite, quote unquote. And so, how that looks is, you launch a free masterclass. During the free masterclass, you slowly start hyping up the next offer in your product suite, which is going to be a paid offer at a low entry point. Anywhere from $22 to $100, you can decide. And so you create rapport, which is in fact important, with the people that are in your masterclass. And then from that rapport, you can invite them into your offer. You're building trust. This makes sense. It's actually pretty sound advice. Nothing necessarily inherently wrong about or with that. And so then the next thing comes around, your paid offer, your low paid offer. You spend time with them, you move them through whatever it is that the program is. And at the end of that offer, you then move them through the next step of your product suite. That next one is going to be a higher level investment, and it's going to have a little bit more face to face, more high touch kind of thing, right? Then, maybe in between that or before one or the other ends, you launch another free thing and another free thing. And then at the end of the next free thing and at the end of the next level of your product suite, you then announce the next thing, and that is higher price. And so you start building this quote unquote structure, ladder, suite, however you want to call it. And theoretically, you have a consistent influx of customers, people who are new to you, who are just starting to build rapport with you, people who've been in your world for a little bit and are getting to know you a little bit better and therefore feel more confident in investing higher in you, and people who are already ready to be in your space. Because in this world, one on one is the top of the line. And it makes sense as to why, right? Because you're spending a lot of effort, you're spending a lot of energy, you're putting a lot of your attention into each person. It becomes this masterfully crafted thing. It's almost like going to Dior and asking them to make you a personalized gown, right? It's very different from walking into the store and just picking something. This is something that is being tailor made for you, which is honestly the realm that I most prefer and that I find most enriching in so many different ways for varying different reasons. And because it is so high touch, that is going to be sort of the top. Also, this happens because a vast majority of people are not going to turn on their phones, look on Instagram, see your face for the very first time, and immediately say, I want to work with you one on one. Not always that happens, but I'm just saying it's not as if it's like the default setting. And so that's how I started, and it was moving along. I was seeing movement, I was getting new clients, I was getting excited. And then there was this point of just getting stuck. And I was getting stuck for many different reasons. But one of the reasons was, again, that how hadn't really been answered. And I was getting very tired of launching thing after thing after thing after thing because building a launch takes a long time. It's not like as if I just wake up this morning and I go, here's my new thing, have at it, right? I have to work on building awareness around the thing. I have to work on building on getting eyes on the thing weeks, sometimes even months in advance before I even consider opening the doors to the offering that is going to be put out there for people to join. So it's a lot. And if you're thinking about this in the progression that we discussed earlier, you're doing launch after launch after launch. Every month, there's a new thing. Right? Every couple of like every quarter, there's a new two, three new things. And so it becomes very fatiguing because at the end of the day, you as the person are also the product, which can be very exhausting and it's very taxing on your nervous system and on your mind. And so it just becomes unsustainable. At that point, I reached out to another person and I reached out in the hopes that they could show me how to just focus on the one thing that I wanted most in this whole fucking world, which was to talk about the divine feminine, to explore the wounds of the feminine, how they affect us, to look at how we can embody her archetypal forms in real time so that we can better benefit from our full energetic field and to completely distance it from the old archaic ideas of gender. And so that was it. That was like my offering. The first offering I ever put out there that was in this realm was called Freedom of the Goddess. And it still to this day is my favorite thing that I have done. It just was life. And the conversations that we had in there were impactful and the transformations were tangible and it was lovely and it was beautiful. And I just wanted to do that one thing over and over and over and over again. So I asked, how can I replicate this or how can I put it on autopilot so that I'm not feeling exhausted with having to go through the process of every week I have to put new content out. Every day I have to do this. There's such long-winded processes in place. And I was told that, yes, in fact, we could do that. And I was very excited. I came into that frame and into that world with the frame of mind that I was going to learn. Again, I'm a perpetual learner. I'm so excited to learn new things. It just makes me giddy. And so I was like, this is great. I'm going to learn how to do this. Imagine freedom of the goddess becoming the thing that everyone just comes into all of the fucking time. And I can spend the whole year talking about the goddess. I can spend the whole year just having this be available, and I was so stoked. But then being in that space, there was a lot of toxic patterns and behaviors and things that started really coming to light that I just could not ignore. And I fear that a lot of the conversations in this arena revolve around a couple of really toxic ideas. They revolve around the idea that in order to sell a thing, especially when it's a service that doesn't feel as tangible as me giving you a physical product that you can walk away with, that what you want to sell is, and this was verbatim said in this program. Again, I never do programs, but I did it this one time. In the verbatim, it was said that the thing that you want to sell is some kind of status up level, meaning you're either going to change the way that you look physically, aka fitness, aka weight loss, which I already had a massive freaking issue with. You were going to sell relationship status, aka I'm going to help you find the love of your life, which I also had fucking issues with. Or you're going to sell, I'm going to teach you how to make 10K months without leaving the comfort of your home or sitting by the beach. Does that sound familiar? Because these 3 things are the things that we are being sold on a regular basis, and the reason we are being sold specifically that is because what they will tell you is that you need to sell to a person's pain points, meaning exploit the pain, the hurt, the trauma, the need, the feeling that something is missing in someone's life, and promise them that they will get the thing that is going to change that and you will make money. And I never fucking liked that. It never sat well with me. And I was hyper pressured during my time in this container to not focus on divine feminine or feminine embodiment or any kind of priestess based mentorship that I wanted to be fucking doing. And I was basically talked into, and let me preface this by saying it's important for us to understand that we do have sovereignty over our lives. At the time when I joined, I was still feeling the effects of having spent many years in a toxic relationship where gaslighting was pretty commonplace and where my own reality was still sort of like in that regard, in the regard of communication and of learning to see where people's face value words were coming from versus the actions was like a little unsteady. And it was both. I had my own choices. I chose to join the the group. I chose to devote myself to the study of the things that were being presented to me with the idea in mind that what was going to come out of it was what I told you, that I was going to be able to have the freedom of the goddess be this thing that I could just run all year round and be happy with it and allow it to be what also gave me more room to see people one on one more freely. And so I was very stoked about it. I was like, I'm going to remain open minded. I'm going to try to remain open hearted and sit with this. And what I was being told was that because I'd gone through such a massive transformation in my life with regard to my own relationship, and because I could witness that so clearly, that I should push the relationship angle as the thing that I was going to like really focus my mentorship on. And the way that they phrase this is they'll say, it's fine that you do shadow work. It's fine that you touch on the subconscious. It's fine that you do all of these amazing things, but people don't want that. People don't want depth. People don't want difficult. People don't want to be held accountable. People don't want to have to do the work. What they want is easy and quick and accessible and a promise to the outcome of that thing that they want because their pain point is too great for them to care about anything else and they're not going to invest in you ever because you're too loquacious, you're too verbose, you prattle on too poetically about shit. No one's going to understand what it means to be sovereign of their own lives. No one's going to understand or care what it means to be feminine embodiment. Like, it just was this thing. And so what they said was, but you can bring that to people in your work once they have started working with you on this thing that is not separate from what you do. It's a part of what you do. It's just a different version or a different point or a different point of access, yes, or just a different angle of what you do. And so, what you do is once you get people to sign with you to learn about relationships, then you can start teaching them shadow work in there. And you can start teaching them about this in that place. And that way, it won't be so confrontational and people will actually invest in you. Because what was happening was that I was writing really incredible pieces of content about intuition and what it was. I was even making reels about what it was like to be in that connection with the shadow aspects of the self. I was pouring all of my heart into like the divine feminine aspects and the archetypes. I even had a quiz that I had people like just available for people to take. And this was back in like 2018, 2019, that they could take to see what archetypal form of the divine feminine they were most aligned with. I was doing all of those things and I was very excited about it. And I was being told consistently, not just by this coach, but by other coaches, that it was too much. And I was also feeling as if that was a reflection of the reality that I was living by virtue of having only been able to sell Freedom of the Goddess successfully one time. And then struggling to bring new people into my world. That was not through referral. That was not through word of mouth. That was not through they found me on a podcast or my own podcast. That was how I was getting people. And for some reason at the time, I decided that I was going to make that wrong. And I internalized this idea that I was too much once again. Remember, we have this conversation often. And I think it's important for us to know this. I'm not claiming to be a perfect human being who has already done all the work that she's ever going to need to do and is just sovereign of her entire life in every regard. And I never make a mistake. No, I'm very flawed, very flawed. I mess up, I fail, I make mistakes. And sometimes I forget the lessons that I have integrated and embodied because the lesson shows up in a different way under a different guise. And I'm still moving up that spiral staircase that you've heard me talk about before, because that's growth. That's life. In your life, you're never going to get to that one point where all of a sudden that's it, you're healed, no more trauma, no more things to look at, no more work to be done, no more anything. You're perfect and everything that you do is great and there is no failure and there is no. Like that is not how it works. And so, of course, I'm sitting with this and I'm saying, well, I'm not a business expert. I didn't go to school for business. I don't understand finances. I don't understand the legal aspect. There are things that I know are not my forte. These are not my strengths. And these people that I am hiring in good faith, they are saying that they have the expertise because they spend their time learning these things and they know how to run a business that is clearly very successful and that has had results and yielded results for other people. So maybe it's an ego thing, I told myself. And this is an important thing for us to notice because this happens a lot, not just in this industry, but also in the spiritual community. This idea that it's always you. There's always something broken inside of you. That is the issue. And you've heard me say this before. That is not true. That is not true. There are, in fact, times, yes, when we can better and improve and heal and look at something and say, ooh, that belief system is not serving me. It is just causing strife and it's causing pain. And I want to reframe it. Yes, absolutely. There's a time and a place and a way for everything. There's also a time to say, this is failing not because of me, but because, for example, maybe the marketing isn't strong and I'm not good at marketing. Maybe it's not, the community that I want to be selling in. I'm trying to come up with examples that are not solely related to my own experience or the world that I inhabit in. But maybe, for example, let's say you own a bakery. Maybe the spot that you chose to open the bakery in, it just happens to be so hidden that no one can see it when they're walking down the street. And so they don't know that you're there. And so it's not that your business is failing because of you. You're not the problem. You don't have some sort of internalized misalignment of energy that is preventing you from the thing. But that is the way that it is framed often. And because we've learned through over analyzing, overworking the things for so long, We believe it really is us. It comes down to us. I'm the problem. I'm the broken one, quote unquote. I'm the one that needs to be fixed. I'm the issue. And that's not necessarily true. So I'm there and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I am, in fact, the problem. Maybe I am, quote unquote, too much. And so, because yes, I know I wax poetic often, and the way in which I express myself is very unique and very particular. And sometimes I do word salad, even now in the podcast. And but it's literally a part of my brain structure. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of even how I tell stories. My friends know this. If I go in to tell you a story, it's gonna take me like telling you the whole context of like where it came from, where it started, how it felt, how it went. It's how I'm built, and I think it's beautiful now. I think I love it. I'm grateful for it now. But at the time I was very raw. And I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to make my business work. And I wanted so badly to make it work that I was like, okay, maybe I am the problem. And maybe they're right. Maybe once I get people into the offer, then I can take them deeper because maybe people really don't want the depth. Maybe people don't want to go into the underworld with me necessarily. Maybe they don't necessarily want to be hearing about the dark feminine or what it means to have that dark night of the soul or what it's like to sit in presence with the self so that you can seduce yourself. Maybe they don't want self seduction. Maybe it is too abstract of a context. I still sometimes wonder at this. And I think it's a valid question, but I also think it's a valid thing to know that this matters and that the people who do resonate with it are the people I do want in my environment. And that's okay. And that I don't have to force myself into a smaller container to fit that. And so, what happened? Getting back to the story, speaking of meandering in my thoughts and a little bit of word salad. So, what happened was I was convinced, okay, I was like, I'll give this a shot. So, I decided to put together an offering, a program that I'm actually really freaking proud of. But I wouldn't sell it again. I put together an offering that was called Devoted. And I wanted it to be about interpersonal relationships, yes, of a romantic nature eventually, but mostly I wanted it to be something that women could use to learn that they are not broken, that it is okay for them to have boundaries, that if they notice where in themselves they are feeling like they themselves are the issue, that is where things get sticky. That if they recognize what it is that they want, they need, they desire, and that if they look at how we can match energies, and that if they understand that they themselves are so valuable and worthy, and that they are sacred, that then they could form intimate relationships with someone who was going to be aligned with them, that was going to resonate at the same kind of frequency, that they were going to be able to open the door to the possibility for more in their lives rather than feeling like they needed to settle because I know exactly what settling feels like. I know exactly what it's like to put yourself in a situation where you believe that you're somehow monstrous and that you don't actually deserve better than this, that it's a miracle that this person is even putting up with you and that you're never going to find any other person in this world who could ever possibly love you because you are unlovable and impossible and just gross. I know what that feels like. So I built the program around that and it was lovely. And the people who were in there with me, they saw great benefit. And I just did not feel okay though with that being the thing. I said I wanted freedom of the goddess. This was fun. This is great. I love it. This is actually in fact something that I do one-on-one still to date with the people I work with because a lot of times people come to me when they are moving into a new phase of their life post divorce or during divorce. It's more of a divorce doula service that I offer and I love it and I freaking live for it as well, but it's different. I didn't want it to be packaged as this thing that I was like a relationship coach. And that's how I allowed myself to market myself for a very long time until I was like, this is just not okay. I remember I finished that program in the first place. I wasn't the only one. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I don't want to be like, oh, woe is me. And this is like horrible, whatever. I'm bringing this up because I want you to understand how this system is operating and has been operating for a very long time because it's not serving anyone. It's not serving a single person, not the way that we think it is, not the way that we wanna think it is, and I think there's a lot of lack of integrity and a lot of toxicity within that system, and that's why it was important for me to talk about this today. And so what I saw in the container was it wasn't just me. There was people in there who were therapists, who were psychologists, who very specifically wanted to help women with trauma, who very specifically wanted to help them move past the wounding of their past relationships with abusive people, who had big visions for what a woman's life could be like in freedom, similar to mine, but different in a beautiful way. And they themselves were also in this public forum bullied by the person that was leading this, to the point where not only were they in tears every single time that we got together, but they ended up dropping out. It was so heartbreaking. I can't tell you how many people from that group I still keep in touch with who were very traumatized in that space, who felt very injured, who stopped their businesses altogether, who lost faith, who so much damage was done. And the thing is, this has been a consistent thing that continues happening. So again, we're getting told you can only sell status. We're getting told that you have to do it a specific cookie cutter way. In other words, you have to establish your free masterclass with these talking points. And every single time that you do it, you have to have a tangible outcome that someone is going to say, yes, that speaks to my pain point. Yes, I'm going to spend all of this money on this. And then it gets even more pervasive because then they start talking about the investment angle in a way that is so wrong and predatory. And I just, before I get into that, they address and talk about and assume that people are stupid. Literally, this was told to me verbatim. People are stupid. You're too intelligent for them. They don't understand your words. You're, again, too much. You can't sell this to them. You have to sell it like you would sell this to a 5-year-old. That's the scope through which most people, a vast majority of people in this industry, and it's not just this industry, I'm fully aware that this is like marketing in general, but I'm focusing on this particular conversation from this angle because number one, it's the space that I was in for a while. And it's because a lot of people that I know are getting into this even now. And I want to make sure that this is made clear because that's bullshit. People are not stupid, nor should they be infantilized, nor should we be dumbing things down for people because they're so dumb, they're never going to understand this, nor should we be selling pain to people who are in pain. It's not ethical. It's not okay. And so, again, this is where we get into the presentation of that investment, right? So it's always, don't forget, ugh, I don't I don't even know how to say this. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. At a point, someone in this space said, "Don't forget that people who are unemployed are getting those paychecks and they can totally pay you. And don't forget that there is such a thing as credit card debt and there is good debt to be had." This languaging sounded so familiar to me, to the high control, predatory, often culty spaces that I had seen and unfortunately had the misfortune of being exposed to by virtue of having this be a system within the company that I used to work with in corporate world, by the way, that I stopped showing up. I stopped showing up, and when I left, I remember telling them, "This is so horrible what you are doing. This is," I was in tears. I'm like, "This is terrible. You market yourself as this feminine coach who is going to help and who's going to do all of these things, and you promise all of this, and then you weaponize very specific targeted ideals and very targeted tools that benefit only you to make basically replicas of the person who was the lead head business coach in this space, make replicas of that and make replicas of their system because it worked for them, while it's not going to work for everybody else who has joined this program. And then you parade the people who did make use of it in a way that happened to have work for them. A couple of them, which I knew already had success prior to coming into that space, but that's a whole other story. And then you compare them and say, well, so and so did it. Why can't you? What's wrong with you? Mentally weaponizing things, psychologically abusing things is not okay. And it's part of this conversation. Do I believe that investing in yourself is valuable, worthy, and can be great? Yes. Have I invested high amounts of money in a lot of my personal development and a lot of my schooling and a lot of everything? Yes. You, of course, absolutely. Heck, even my yoga teacher certifications with thousands of dollars, worth it, every penny. And I loved it and I made it work. And yes, you can make things work. And yes, I know where the idea of there is no such thing as no money, no time, blah, blah, come from. And it should never be weaponized. And that's exactly what they were teaching people to do because they were teaching techniques and tactics. And I'm not going to repeat all of them here because I don't want this to also be an access point for people who would use them in an ill fashion. But they were teaching techniques and tools that very much are meant to psychologically exploit the person that you are selling the thing to and to put them in a way and in a state where they are going to feel like they need to. They're being compelled to say yes. And I know that sounds like, well, you can't really compel anyone. You are somewhat correct, but there is a way in which to phrase things and in which you can do things, even physically. There's a patterning of how you speak and in the way in which you deliver things that salespeople have known about for many, 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 many fucking years that can be used to get you to say yes to that thing. And you know it because you have left places going, what, why, how did I buy this? And having that buyer's remorse. You have. And so they were teaching all of these things. And it was awful. And I said as much to them. And the problem is that I see this has become a little bit of a plague. It's become a little bit of an infestation. I think a lot of the people that come into the coaching industry come into it with a very sincere and pure heart of service. They really want to see this world be better. They might even be very idealistic. They want what's best for everyone. They want people to feel loved, to feel cherished, to feel safe, to create lives that are going to feel deeply fulfilling and peaceful and full of joy. And there are a lot of people in this industry who entered the industry believing that this was going to be their get rich quick ticket because a lot of the marketing of these business coaches has been you can do this from the comfort of your home or sitting by the pool, sipping a pina colada, and you don't have to lift a finger. You're just going to learn to manifest the people into your world. And all you have to do is follow the system, and all you have to do is spend time in my energy. And by spending time in my energy, you are going to calibrate to your most magnetic self. And all you have to do is spend tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars in this because the more you invest, the more the universe rewards you. And it's wrong. I don't think that we can be in this space. And I consider myself adjacent. I have been making a very concerted effort to stay as far off the deep end with this realm as I possibly can for a very long time. It's been my goal from the first. In fact, back in like 2017, I had a conversation with a friend who did this really interesting subconscious game. And one of the things that I told them, because they were like, well, what do you want for your business? What do you envision for your business? And I was saying the one thing I don't want is not to be like this person, not to be like this person, not to be like this person. People that I knew that were weaponizing things that were important, that could be healing medicine, that could be powerful tools of improvement and health, but that were weaponizing them in such a way that it was becoming dangerous, and I wanted nothing to do with that, and I still want nothing to do that to do with that, and I try very carefully to make sure that I stay in my own realm of values and in my own realm of integrity and in my own space. And this is why I am saying I don't believe that it's okay for us to just sit here and judge and say, this person is evil, that person, blah, blah, and to talk bad on their names and to spread rumors about them. All the while, we're still in the same sort of space using some of the same tools. So, this is why I don't run programs at that in that way and at that like magnitude anymore. I haven't done it for a while. My focus is mostly one on one, and I have the occasional VIP immersion because I love spending time with people face to face. I have many different levels in which people can come and work with me at many different kinds of accessible points. And it's on purpose and it's by design that I only take a handful of people every year because I don't want to do this thing. This thing doesn't feel okay to my soul. This thing doesn't work with me. It's not meant for myself and it's not meant for the people that I want to work with. And I think that if we don't have these conversations, we are also doing ourselves and the people that we serve a disservice because we have to have these conversations. We can't just sit here and watch people be predatory, watch people be manipulative, watch them really take advantage of something that is not okay and just be silent about it. I don't have the perfect solution to this problem. I believe that a lot of this starts with good intention, which the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I believe a lot of people are hiding behind that idea of the intentionality that started off good, and they're not owning what is actually happening. They're not owning the fact that today you made $500,000 while you were sleeping. And yet I spoke to you yesterday when you told me that you needed help. And I said, come and work with me. And you said, I can't pay you. And I'm speaking from actually having experienced this. You guys, this isn't something I'm just making up or pulling it off the top of my head. I have had this happen. I know people in the industry who are doing this, who have done this. I know people who say, I will teach you how to make 100K, 10K, 200K, a million, who can barely pay their rent. And they're pretending that their system, their way, their thought, their access to them is the thing that is going to give all the people around them the solution. And it works like an MLM. That's how it's starting to work. Because now there are business coaches that are teaching business coaches how to teach business coaches how to teach business coaches how to teach business coaches. And fuck, that's not even just that. I'm seeing it even in the spiritual world in the sense of now there are priestesses teaching priestesses how to be priestesses so that they can teach priestesses to it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And it's become this thing. We're churning out more of the same. We're churning out copies and replicas, and we're saying that we're teaching people how to do the thing because the thing is going to give them an outcome that is actually impossible or that is not going to work for them because that's not who they are, that is not tailored to them, that doesn't make any sense for their soul, for their life, for whatever. And we are making them feel bad then for not receiving the thing because there must be something wrong with them. They must not be doing the system right. Something is it's them. It's a them problem. It's never a problem with the system. It's never a problem with the fact that marketing like this is not sustainable. It's never I even know people who are saying, "Oh, it's your fault that you're not selling programs. It's your fault you're not getting clients because you're not putting yourself on social media." Meanwhile, what they mean, and they'll say, "I put myself on social media and I never pay for advertisement and I'm making tons of money." Meanwhile, in the meantime, there are other things that are going on in the background. There are connections that are not being spoken of. There are, in fact, advertisements being paid for that they're not acknowledging. There's so much more depth underneath the surface of what they're showing you that you don't know about, that is why things are working for them. And it's causing major, 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 major trauma, pain. It's become an issue. And I think if we really are service-based beings, in the sense that we want to serve others, we want to guide them, we want to be the mirror to the other people in our lives. If we want to do that in a way that is beneficial to everybody, in a way that feels properly aligned, that is not fraught with toxicity, that is not ultimately embedded in a cesspool of old patterns that not only have to do with patriarchal wounding and capitalistic issues, it's much more than even that. If we want to be service based beings that are going to do that, we should be having conversations that open up the door to the visibility of this reality and that also don't box us up in a way that we are going to be harmed as well. Meaning, we also want to keep in mind that telling someone that their services should be free because they are spiritual is also not the way. That's also not true. We are talking about a service being rendered. A lot of us have been brought up to believe that anyone who's in service, whether it's someone cutting your hair, whether it's your waitress, whether it is the barista at the coffee shop, that they really shouldn't be paid much, that they're doing a service. And so they're servants. Therefore, who cares? Whatever. I don't care if they get paid or not. They're servants. That's the attitude. There's a lot of stuff conflated in that, and I understand why it becomes this compulsory thing that we want to demand and exact, especially of people who we believe are in service, especially in the community of the spiritual community, right? We're like, well, no, if you say that you are a spiritual person, why do you need money? But we are living in this world as human beings, matter based beings. And so it's okay for us to say, hey, this is how I make my living. And it's okay for us to say, this is what you are getting from my energy, my time, my studies. The years of studies that many of us have spent on our the years of mastery that we've spent on our craft, that does matter. And yes, we can charge. And yes, there's a way to do that ethically. And no, we don't have to make people put themselves in debt in order to do that either. I don't support that. In fact, I've had times when I've had conversations with potential clients who don't feel like the investment is okay for them at that time. And I say, that's fine. There's okay. There might be a time when that will become feasible. And that's okay. And if this doesn't work, then what about this? There have been times when, if I've been able to in my business, I've even offered scholarships or there's ways in which we can do those things. But that doesn't mean inherently that because we are spiritual, because we offer a service, because we're caring people, because we're caring for other people, that we should just not earn or not ask for compensation. That's also wrong. That either one of these extremes is not okay. Finding the balance, finding the way in the middle, that's important. And that's why these conversations matter. Because again, we're talking about the whole scope. We're talking about transparency. We're talking about not freaking treating people like they're children and then selling them on something that hurts. We're talking about not weaponizing people's vulnerability against them. We're talking about not using tools and tactics to sell something to someone that is not fucking okay. We're talking about not using shame and or guilt to enslave people and thereby make them indebted to you in any way, shape, or form. We're talking about transparency, once again, I'm repeating this word on purpose, about the work and about what that looks like and about understanding that what worked for her may not work for you. This is the conversation that's not being said. I told you at the beginning of this whole conversation that one of the first coaches that I worked with, every time I came up with the how, it was always a deflection. It was always you're too focused on the how. You're too worried. You need to journal about this. You've got an energetic block. It was always that. And the reason why it was always that is because they didn't know how they had done it. They didn't. They had zero clue how they had gotten to where they had gotten to, other than by saying, I'm going to teach you how to make money, X amount of money, in X amount of time if you work with me and if you pay me X amount of money. And that's become the formula. You've seen it. You've seen it. Join this free thing And then the next thing that you do is going to be this much. And then the next thing that you do is going to be this much. And if you really, really want to exponentially like take your growth, your business, your heart's desire to the next level, then the big investment, and it's going to be your fault if you don't take it because there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with why you don't believe that you deserve this. There's something wrong with what your belief systems around abundance are. And it's like it's even harder because what's happening here is there is a nugget of truth embedded into a lot of these things that people are selling, and it becomes almost impossible to discern the truth from the shit. And we're not having these conversations. A lot of the time, what I see is either dogpiling on a person, talking crap about a person, comparing someone to a person, e- even coming from a place of, you shouldn't be working with that person, you should be working with me, which also is not okay. I see a lot of that instead of open conversation about the fact that, hey, these things are not okay. These things are not okay. And maybe it's time we start addressing them and saying, this isn't going to work for everybody. And you don't need to be a replica of so and so, nor do you need to be killing yourself to do launch after launch after launch in this particular way, with this particular patterning, with these words, with these pain points, with this structure in order to make money, because it may not even work for you. And we're not even taking into consideration the scope of the online world right now, meaning social media is no longer what it used to be. You heard me say earlier, I was getting a lot of my clients either through my podcast, through word of mouth, through recommendations, or sometimes even from like having spent a little bit of time with them face to face in person. That's how I was getting, but very rarely, and on Instagram a little bit, but very rarely. I wasn't really getting anybody from Facebook. My Facebook, I love to go in there and I can actually like write a big, long, hefty essay type post. And so I love it. I spend a lot of time in there. I go in there first thing in the morning so I can see my memories. And then I go in there to expand just my verbiage, my words, my content, my heart. My content is my heart a lot of times. And I go in there to do that, but haven't gotten a single client from there. Not a single one. And so this whole thing that they were like, you need to do a group on Facebook, and in that group, you need to go live every day. And if you go live every day, then you're going to be able to sell the thing. But who says who? That's not the only way to do things. This is not the only path. And take it out of the scope of the business world. Even if I was going to say this about an actor, there isn't just one way to be an actor. There isn't just one methodology either, right? You could be method, you could not be method. You could choose to be film, television, you could choose to be community theater, commercial. There isn't just one thing. There isn't just one box in which you are going to fit yourself into in order to be successful. And then we need to redefine how we look at success as well. And we need to take a look at what it is that our expectation is when we come into this world. In fact, again, to take it out of the coaching world, I saw this a lot in the yoga space as well. So when I first got certified to be a yoga teacher, there was only one place in all of Houston, Texas that was offering certifications. It was great. The guy who ran it was this hippie. He'd been around forever. He'd done yoga for since forever, and he was kind of cynical and kind of harsh. And at the time I didn't understand it. I understand it now. And that was how I did my certification. And then a little bit after that, not too long, all of a sudden, every single person I came across was a yoga teacher. And every single person that I came across who was a yoga teacher had an Instagram with beautiful, aesthetically pleasing pictures of them doing a handstand or a headstand or something really freaking challenging where they were like turned over into a pretzel and presenting that as yoga when that's not yoga, nor what the yoga practice was really intended to do when it was more focused at other things. But that's a freaking diatribe. Anyway, I saw that. And then an article in the New York Times came out that said that yoga teachers can make $100,000 a year. And all of a sudden, the number of yoga teachers had triplified. And now there are so many yoga teachers out there, and a lot of them are struggling. And vast majority of them are not being able to sustain their livelihoods from teaching yoga, the thing that they love most. And even yoga studios are struggling, and a lot of yoga studios have taken on to or have started basically keeping their yoga studios afloat by instilling teacher trainings because that's what pays. So I'm saying, while I have been focusing and hyper focusing in the coaching industry in this conversation, I am also not saying that this doesn't happen elsewhere. And I am not saying that is the only space that is like bereft of morals or whatever. No, but I want us to start paying attention and questioning a little bit more and thinking a little bit more deeply and saying, maybe this one size fits all approach to all of life and all of existence isn't quite so good. And maybe it's okay for us to say that while we ourselves believe in this service and that while we want to show up as the facilitators for something awesome, maybe you are a business coach and you are ready to teach something incredible. Teach that, but don't. I'm taking a breath because it sounds harsh that don't, as in you shouldn't. And it's important for you to consider, I would rather say. Consider that as you teach people what it is that you want to teach them as a business coach, you do have the possibility of doing it in a way that serves you and serves the client, in a way that doesn't necessarily have to demand that the person across from you twist themselves into a version of what you believe has worked best for you. There is also a lot of import in the conversation of what that pricing is going to be like and the amount of pressure and the tactics and the techniques that we are utilizing to sell something. Because if we say that we are doing this for the betterment of someone's soul and heart, then I think it merits some sort of exploration rather than just taking it for granted that this is how you do the thing. I'll give you only one of the things because I feel like this one is important for us to know. And I also hope no one takes this and misuses it. But one of the tactics that is getting taught, not just where I was, but by a lot of people, is that what you do is to sell something, you tell people the price and then you shut up. It's $20,000. And then you shut up and you wait for the other person to then say something because that's how you slowly start hooking them. And that's how you slowly start bringing them into a particular space where you can say, well, if you are okay keeping your life a shit show, then you don't have to invest in this. It's not okay. It's not okay. And we need to have these conversations. I have plenty of friends who are in the industry, who are very ethical, who have a lot of integrity, who do show up for themselves and their clients from a place of authenticity and say, this is what I am offering. And this is what I'm teaching you. Maybe I'm teaching you the way of understanding your marketing. Maybe I'm teaching from an ethical place. Maybe I'm teaching you the way of filming something that is going to be very appealing on social media. Maybe I'm teaching you how to run ads. Maybe I'm teaching you, there's so many things that you could teach, but do we really necessarily have to have this whole rigmarole of let me teach you how to be the person that is going to teach other people how to be the person, how to teach other people, how to be the other person, how to teach other people. That's not okay. The other thing that feels very reminiscent of the MLM world, and I should know because I spent a little time in that world, is that this a lot of the way that these people are actually making their businesses work is by being in proximity to people who have made their business work and staying in their worlds and marketing themselves in those worlds. So, one of the things that the first person I worked with told me was you need to look at this person, you need to join their group, you need to put posts on that group, and that's how people are going to meet you, and that's how you're going to get clients because they didn't know how to answer the how of my question of how do I get more fucking clients? They didn't because they themselves didn't know except for leveraging someone else's success, except for doing all of these really ridiculous things that were not doing anything and that never felt okay with me. So it's just we really are in a state right now where we need to be having these conversations. We need to be having these conversations because if we don't, things are going to get worse and worse and more hurt is going to happen. And I'm not saying that every single last business coach is evil and every single last I'm not saying that. And again, these aren't these I'm not talking about like an exact blanket statement here, all business coaches are evil, all life coaches are evil. No, I just want us to be mindful and cognizant and say, like, hey, wait a second. Like, what about this is not feeling okay and why? And in which regard is this actually serving all of our highest goods? And am I entering this space with my crown firmly planted on my head? And can I stand in my sovereignty when something isn't right? Because it's important. I didn't when I joined that group, but we learn, right? And then the second time, and a time after that, when something was presented to me that I knew immediately was a no, I was like, no. And so these conversations matter. Again, not to make this whole, we really didn't know what this conversation was going to be like. I don't even have notes in front of me, which I sometimes do when I'm making podcasts because, as you can tell, my brain does meander and I get lost in my own word salad. But I didn't know what this was going to be like. I just knew that I needed to bring this to the forefront because this feels like a conversation that's important. I just feel like the more reluctant we are to admit that there is something wrong in the industry, the more it's going to rot. We need to be willing to look at it head on and say, this is what's happening. And this is what we can do to start healing this. This is what we can do to metaphorically take the scalpel knife and kind of take the diseased flesh off and then start applying the ointment that is going to allow for the healing to take place. And it's going to take time. It's going to take time because it took a lot of time to get us here in the first place. So it's going to take a lot of time to heal as well. And again, I don't have the perfect solution. I would love to talk to more people about what this gets to look like. And it matters greatly because also too this is the kind of space and the kind of verbiage and the kind of tools and the kind of tactics and the kind of thing that gets used to in fact rob people of their autonomy and their free will, and that gets so weaponized in culty spaces. And I'm not the foremost expert on cults. I'm not. I mean, I'm very interested in the psychology of it and everything, but I am not the person to go to for that. I'm just saying that I can see this play out in real time, this culty behavior, and that it's harming us and that it's causing a lot of distress because not everyone benefits from it. And this idea that everyone is going to make 10K months for the rest of their lives by sitting by the pool with their laptops on their legs. It's not sustainable. Now, can it happen? Sure. Have I myself done it? Yeah. And I share those moments of like pleasure even on Instagram, but I'm not sharing to say, reach out to me so that I can teach you how to do this. I'm sharing because in my case, having freedom in my life at that degree feels necessary, is become important, and it's not what sustains me, but it's beautiful, and when I get moments to celebrate the things in my life that make me happy, I do. Not so that I can say, "Look at this status that I have," and then you don't have the status to get the thing, to do the thing, to be at the place, like, fuck that shit, like, that is awful, and yet that's what happens in this coaching industry so often. And again, we don't know. We only see the pictures, we only see the videos, we only read the words, and we only hear the words, but we don't know what's actually there. And I am telling you right now, I have had many interactions with some of those people who claim millions and then have reached out directly to me to work with me and say they can't pay. And I think that it just merits us to look at it because there's something there. So I hope, I really hope that this conversation was valuable to you in one way or another. Maybe you were making yourself wrong for not getting the expedited results. Maybe you started believing that you had to give up your dream. Maybe you just felt like you were the reason why the thing never worked. I don't know. Maybe you just had left a space like the one I mentioned where you got bullied and psychologically maligned to the point where you no longer even know what's up and what's down. Maybe. And I just want you to know that you're not alone, that there is, in fact, something really wrong in this whole industry, coaching as by and large, whether it's life, whether it's business, whether it's whatever, just the coaching industry in general, there is something really wrong here and that we do need to start addressing it. And so I hope that you see that. And I hope that you consider where you are at as well, if you are in the industry, so that you can move from a place of integrity and a place that feels aligned with your highest good and the highest good of the people that you serve, even if that means that you keep a job as well. That's what I do, by the way. I have my clients. I told you I only take a few handful for one-on-one clients a year, maybe a couple of VIP immersions here and there. Every now and then I play with something like right now I've got an offering called Lantom, which basically is Voxer. Like, in other words, I sit and talk to you and I hear where you're at in your life. And from that place, I make transmissions for you that I send to you via Voxer. And sometimes I send rituals and somatic exercises and things that you can use on your own time to help you really expand your own self-awareness. And it's beautiful. It's not a program. I'm not shoving you in there with a billion people. But anyway, I say that to say maybe it's just time to start looking at things differently and to start considering, oh, yeah, so I do that. And I also work from home on not just my business, I do other things too. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like that's a thing too, is a lot of people have been told you have to quit your 9 to 5 in order to make this work. That's your show of faith. If you really believe that you're going to be able to make it work, if you really want the universe to provide and to manifest the thing, which also is bullshit, by the way, but if you really want to do that, then quit your job and prove it. And then people are ending up in really dire situations with their finances because they did that. And that's not fucking okay either. So I'm just hoping that this conversation is serving someone and that is giving you freedom to recognize that number one, there's nothing wrong with you. Number two, there is, in fact, something wrong in the coaching industry we need to be talking about. We can't turn a blind eye or hide our head in the sand anymore. And number three, that there is potential for better for you. So, again, I hope this was of service. And if you want to reach out and have a conversation about this, maybe you want to share your experience in the coaching world, maybe you have questions, I don't know. If you just want to reach out and have a conversation with me about this, I am here for you. Info@yoursoulfulgoddess.com is my email. And then you can find me on Instagram at mindfully sovereign, where I'm still posting my heart and as well as my Substack, which is all going to be in the notes. But, you know, definitely start considering this. Start looking at it differently. I think that we can better this. I think that we can still improve this. And I think that we can serve each other beautifully. But first, we need to talk about what's going wrong. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. So, all right. After all of that, thank you for joining me. I will see you again in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful rest of your day.